Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I have to reveal a little bit of investigative reporting this morning. Congressman Mike Gallagher is my guest, as he is most Wednesdays. Good morning, Congressman. I want to get to a story that I was reading yesterday. I was downtown having lunch with a couple of people, and I read a story in the Washington Post, the 5 lies about TikTok. I really couldn't believe it. It was a pure propaganda piece. Is TikTok owned by the CCP? No, it's not. It's owned by ByteDance, which is a privately held company with 3 Americans on the board. What is going on with this? This should have already passed.
What's going on, Hugh, is really an unprecedented lobbying effort. TikTok has about 7 different lobbying firms on retainer. They spent $500,000 just in the final quarter of last year alone on lobbying, and they're doing everything they can to spread lies about the bill. If you just look at what they pushed in the pop-up ad that they forced on all of their users when the bill was going through the House of Representatives, it was filled with lies about the bill. They're calling it an outright ban. That is, of course, not true. What we're trying to force is a divestiture. That is what we're after. But to say that China does not, the Chinese Communist Party more specifically, does not control TikTok just misunderstands the reality of how the economy works in China. There is no such thing as a private company in China. And particularly when you're talking about national champions like ByteDance, they are beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. You have CCP officials that are embedded in the corporate governance structure of ByteDance. So this is just the latest in a series of lies by TikTok. They do not want to admit reality. The CEO was not truthful when he testified before Congress. I am urging my colleagues in the Senate to take up this bill. It passed with 352 votes in the House of Representatives. The White House has signaled that they will sign the bill if and when it passes the Senate. But we can't afford to allow this to linger, particularly as we get closer to an election. The unclassified Director of National Intelligence Assessment has already said, this is unclassified, that TikTok is being used by the People's Republic of China to meddle in American elections.
We saw that in real time after the attack in Israel. We saw that in real time. The TikTok algorithm loaded up pro-Hamas propaganda and put it everywhere in the United States. They also got people to replay the Osama bin Laden video from decades ago. It's really a terrible. Where is it in the Senate, though? Why hasn't it already been voted on? When something passes the House of Representatives with 350 votes, it's not really going out on a limb to support the thing.
Well, Chuck Schumer could put it on the appropriations bills that are moving this week. I would love to see that happen. Otherwise, it'll get referred to the Commerce Committee in the Senate. The chairwoman is Senator Cantwell, and the ranking member is Senator Cruz. So we're hoping to work with them, if it doesn't get attached to the appropriations bill, work with them on a path forward through the committee and ultimately through the Senate. Talk about not working on a weekday. You know, Hugh, it's hard to get the Senate to do everything. But luckily, we have members like Tom Cotton who are sounding the alarm, who have been very vocal in urging Leader Schumer to put this bill on the floor of the Senate. I get that anything moving through the Senate cuts, into the limited time they have necessary. But this is an opportunity to do something that's fundamentally bipartisan, that has the overwhelming support of the House, and that the White House is ready to sign.
Congressman Gallagher, if we can't do this, I don't know what we can do about the CCP. In other words, this one is so obvious. This is such an easy win. This is such a pinata because TikTok has been TikTok for a long time. It is destructive of people's lives. It is a suck on your data. I won't go near it. I don't even like to have my phone near a phone with TikTok on it. But if we can't do this, what else do you think we can do vis-a-vis the CCP?
This is a basic test of how resilient our republic is from our communist adversary. To your point, Hugh, I mean, a Chinese company couldn't buy your radio station. They couldn't buy Fox News. We have well-established precedent regarding foreign adversary ownership when it comes to traditional media. And given the fact that TikTok is increasingly the go-to news source for Americans under the age of 30, the same precedent should apply in this case. And as for any concerns about the First Amendment or free speech, you are a vaunted constitutional lawyer, Hugh. You can push back if I'm wrong, but this bill doesn't say anything with respect to content or speech. We're talking about foreign adversary ownership of a social media application. And if the ownership changes, people can continue to post whatever they want on social media. Now, then we'll have a separate debate, which is a debate that all parents should have about social media in general, whether it's an American-owned company or a Chinese-owned company, and the correlation between social media use and anxiety, depression, and suicide. But that is not what this bill addresses. This bill addresses the fact that our foremost adversary now has control over what is the dominant news platform for Americans under the age of 30. That is crazy to allow that to continue. And if we allow it to continue, that's national self-suicide and basically us surrendering in the early stages of the new Cold War.
Chairman Gallagher, I don't know if you've seen John Haidt's new book, The Anxious Generation, which I have been reading this week. I brought it back on the plane with me. John Haidt is a man of the left. He writes for The Atlantic. He's an extraordinary scholar, though. And what we have done or not done for Americans under the age of 30 is to basically abandon the field of their attention span and their content delivery mechanism to a market about which older Americans like me, boomers, and even middle-aged Americans like you, and that's what you are now, you have no idea what's going on in the lives of young people. And TikTok is what's going on in the lives of young people, and it's a disaster.
Well, I think Jonathan Haidt has written the best book of the last 10 years in his previous book, The Coddling of the American Mind. I cannot recommend it highly enough to your listeners. My wife and I have both read it numerous times. I think all parents should read it. I've read parts of The Anxious Generation, and I found it to be spectacular. He's at the leading edge of the research surrounding the corrosive impact of social media use and its strong correlation with anxiety, depression, and suicide. And the other thing we've done is bubble wrapped our kids and allowed them less time to do free play outside. And Jonathan Haidt has talked about that. Notably, in his interview this week on Joe Rogan's podcast, Jonathan Haidt endorsed our TikTok effort and talks about how TikTok is unusually malicious in terms of how addictive the algorithm is, as well as the national security concerns surrounding Chinese ownership. And so we're hoping to host Jonathan Haidt when he comes to D.C. next month. He's an indispensable voice on these issues. And to your point, Hugh, at a broader level, as I step back and get out of sort of the military aspects of this competition or the technological aspects of this competition, I don't know how we beat China over the long term if a whole generation of Americans are illiterate, if they can't read and they don't have attention spans. And we have to figure out a way to reduce this addiction to social media. It's why I've called it digital fentanyl. We have actual fentanyl that is destroying the lives of millions of Americans. And then we have digital fentanyl that is destroying the minds of an entire generation of Americans. And as for the boomers, Hugh, you guys broke everything, and my generation is trying to fix it.
All right, so we'll put that aside, but let's go back to this First Amendment issue. It will be a case of first impression. We do not know how the Supreme Court ruled. It is my opinion it is perfectly legitimate and has been upheld before to control the means of production of media by foreign adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think it'll be a close case. I think it'll be a 9-0 case. But let's bring the case. We can't bring the case until the bill passes. And if I see a senator not voting on this, I am going to guess it's a lobbying effort. I don't even know what 7 lobbying firms can do. What can they persuade people about? There is no discussion here. It's a disaster for the country to have TikTok.
Well, I think their primary lobbying tactic backfired. Their primary lobbying tactic was to push that notification to millions of their users, requesting their zip code, and then having them call their members of Congress. In some cases, you had kids with school bells going off in the background, threatening suicide, telling their members of Congress not to vote on this TikTok bill. I think that just proves the point about how this platform could be weaponized in order to interfere with the legislative process. And so that is why we got such a strong vote out of the House last week.
Well, good luck in getting the attention of your colleagues like